You've just explained insomnia to me in a way that no one ever has. And I'm
Yeah,
like, this is
that's what happens.
what happens. Right. And so now I completely understand this concept of stimulus control.
Right.
So let's talk about CBT-I,
Okay.
cognitive behavioral therapy for
Okay.
insomnia.
Yeah.
And obviously there's lots of components to it, one of them being the stimulus control, which now is like making so much more sense to me.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what that is, why it does work so well for people. And, and also, back to this whole like training this negative association, this negative stimulus, where you're like just the act of getting into bed
Right.
is making you hyper aroused, is giving you anxiety. Is that also true then? Let's say you do eventually fall asleep, then you wake up, whatever, you have to repeat, whatever it is, it
Right.
wakes you up, you're hot.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're still in that bed and it's like, again, that negative association, right? And so it's
Exactly.
like every time you wake up.
And that's why some people, they fall asleep just fine because, so something for people to understand is that sleep-wake is not a unidimensional line where you're sleepy on one end and awake on the other end. There's actually two separate dimensions. Think of it like there's treble and there's bass. And it's not just mono. There's treble and there's bass. You have a wakefulness signal and you have a sleep signal that are separate from each other. They're related, but they do function somewhat independently. And so sedatives boost that sleepiness signal. A lot of times with insomnia, what happens because of the excess activation or arousal, your sleep signal could be just fine. It's your wake signal that might be too high. And so when someone is taking, say, a sedative medication, what you're doing is you're trying to drive up that sleepiness signal so high, it's just steamrolling over whatever activation you have. And often that may work. And the reason it can work long term sometimes is if you steamroll it over enough, you can maybe break that learning. So it isn't just the sedation, but for a lot of people, it's not sedation that's the problem. The problem is in the activation. And when you're doing therapy for insomnia, it's often not about, so patient will come in thinking like, how do you make me sleepier? Actually, we've got some tools for that. And we'll talk about that. But often the magic isn't about making you sleepy. It's about making you less awake. And it's a different process. And that's also why it doesn't work 100% of the time. Nothing does. But that's why CBT-I is so effective, because it's actually targeting the problem that the person actually has.